After playing through the masterpiece that is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, many longtime Zelda fans were left perplexed at the lack of an appearance of one of the franchise's most iconic relics. A staple throughout the series, the Triforce has made an appearance in every Zelda game to date, if only but a small nod or in the form of a simple symbol. While the relic has grown of importance as of the Skyward Sword release, the Triforce itself has only actually appeared in 7 titles to date. And with Breath of the Wild now 3 years old, many fans are still left to ponder and speculate the answer to the question, where is the Triforce in Breath of the Wild? Some have said it's buried, others have claimed that Ganondorf has it. A few say that it is only a legend, while many seem to have found their answer in Princess Zelda. Seeing as Princess Zelda possessing the Triforce is a popular theory, we're left to wonder, what has led so many people to believe that this is the best option? What evidence is there to support this idea? Does Zelda really possess the Triforce of the gods? Now let's dive into the theory. The evidence used to support the Zelda possession theory first comes from a recovered memory, Zelda's Awakening. In this memory, Link has battled uncounted guardians and has been gravely injured. As Link rears up once more to face his final fate of an oncoming guardian laser, Zelda steps in front of him as an act to save her beloved knight. As she does this, she is finally able to activate her dormant powers. With a blinding light radiating from her hand, her power shines forth in an explosion akin to Goku's Spirit Bomb. The Guardians were defeated where they stood. This alone is not evidence to support that Zelda bears the Triforce. The evidence comes from the mark that appears upon the back of her hand as she activates this divine power. Upon the back of her hand, the symbol of the complete Triforce was seen shining brightly. If you are new to the Legend of Zelda series and Breath of the Wild is your first game, then this is probably the first time you have seen this mark. This mark, however, has been around since the very beginning of the Zelda franchise. Dating all the way back to the second game in the series, this mark makes its first appearance in the game manual for Zelda 2, The Adventures of Link. This mark serves as the call to action for the young hero of Hyrule and is used as a story point introducing the purpose behind the hero's adventure. Upon his 16th birthday, Link is surprised to find the mark of a golden triangle glowing upon the back of his hand. This mark was originally called the Mark of the Hero and was used to identify one who was worthy of seeking out and using the Triforce of Courage. It was the result of a magic spell cast by the unnamed Great King of Hyrule prior to his passing. It has since evolved through the franchise and has become even somewhat of a staple to the series. Though, in its origins, it did not inherently mean one had the Triforce. Similarly to the information contained within Zelda 2, The Adventures of Link, after defeating Ganon in the combined game password ending to The Legend of Zelda, The Oracle of Ages and Seasons, Princess Zelda affirms that the mark of the Triforce is just a symbol, when she says, "The 3 triangles on your left hand symbolize power, wisdom, and courage. These are the mark of the hero who is fated to appear when peace crumbles in Hyrule." Yet another reference to the mark being just that, a mark. As this hero doesn't have the Triforce, in fact, this hero isn't even in Hyrule. The history of this mark gets a lot more interesting and complicated in The Legend of Zelda: The Ocarina of Time. In this entry, the mark once again appears upon the back of Link's hand. It also appears upon the hands of Zelda and Ganondorf. This time, each character possesses a fraction of the Triforce, a piece of it physically dwelling within them. The Legend of the Triforce told us in this installment teaches that if one with an unbalanced heart touches the golden relic, the Triforce will split into 3 pieces. The one who touched the golden relic will retain one, while the other 2 pieces find refuge within a chosen bearer. The mark that appears upon each character's hand corresponds with a piece of the Triforce that they possess. This time, only 1/3 of the Triforce is seen glowing upon their hand. This mark only appears upon the hand after receiving their piece of the Triforce in the adult era of this game. If Link is to place the Master Sword in its pedestal and return to the child timeline, the mark disappears from his hand. Why? Because he is going back in time to a point where he no longer had a piece of the Triforce. This piece stayed in the same future where he initially obtained it. At the end of the game, however, after defeating Ganondorf, becoming the hero of time, Link is once again sent back in time. This time, however, Zelda sent him back in time using the powers of the Ocarina of Time. We are told in The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker that when this happened, the hero's Triforce of Courage was split into 8 pieces and scattered across the land to prevent it from falling into the hands of evil. From this, we learned that Link's piece of the Triforce stayed in the adult era. Though the Triforce stayed behind, this Link is shown to still possess the mark of the Triforce upon his left hand in an in-game cutscene with the young princess. This has led some to believe that Link reobtained the Triforce of Courage after returning to the child era, but if that was the case, Princess Zelda would also have the mark as well, because she would then possess the Triforce of Wisdom, the same as she did in the adult timeline. That means that since this Link's spirit was the hero in the adult timeline, his spirit, and subsequently his body, retained the age-old mark of the hero when he returned to the child timeline, as it is the same spirit, just one that has traveled through time. His experiences and his deeds were still his to remember, and for the gods to know. This allows him to show his mark to the King of Hyrule to prove his merit as the hero and validate his claims that Ganondorf was a traitor. This happens once again in The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. In this installment, the mark appears first upon the back of Tetra's hand, but only after her Triforce of Wisdom is reassembled and given to her by King Daphnis no Hansen Hyrule. Receiving this Triforce of Wisdom transforms Tetra into Princess Zelda. Link's mark appears after he completes the Triforce of Courage. Link and Tetra's pieces of the Triforce are quickly taken away from them, and their mark vanishes from the back of their hands. Not even the mark of the hero can be seen upon Link's hand in the final cutscene of the game. A very similar situation also happens in Twilight Princess, this time with Ganondorf. In showing forth his spirit of power and will to live, the mark of the Triforce denoting power blows upon the back of his hand when his execution is botched following his imprisonment within the Arbiter's Ground. Hyrule Historia tells us that Ganondorf had the Triforce of Power. However, Hyrule Historia also states that Ganondorf never entered the Sacred Realm, so there is a very clear contradiction here. How could Ganon possess the Triforce of Power if it was never split in the lore of the games leading up to Twilight Princess? Take Hyrule Historia's claim as a grain of salt. Instead, the evidence I have gathered suggests that the mark is nothing more than a sign of the role that they are to play in the cycle of hatred and malice. But it appears on Link's hand too, you say? Well, that one is even easier to explain. Link isn't saved by his piece of the Triforce when he's forcefully taken into the Twilight Realm, because again, he does not have it. He is saved by his spirit, the spirit of a noble, sublime beast, a spirit that transcends light, darkness, and even in between in the Twilight. After all, the Light World's Triforce is the Twilight World's Triforce. So too are its champions. If you would like to see me do a more detailed explanation of why the Triforce does not make an appearance in Twilight Princess, let me know in the comments below. I am happy to make it if there is an interest, as I have loads more to say on the matter. The next piece of evidence, and frankly the most compelling evidence, can be found in Skyward Sword. When the hero proves his courage by conquering the denizens of the ancient cistern and imbues his sword with Furore's flame, the mark of the Triforce of Courage appears upon the back of his hand. Again, after sailing the desert seas aboard the legendary sand ship and imbuing the sword with Nehru's flame, the mark of the Triforce of Wisdom appears. Lastly, after burning through the lava pits of the Fire Sanctuary and imbuing the sword with Din's flame, the mark of the Triforce of Power also appears upon the back of his hand. The hero of Sky receives the complete Triforce mark upon his hand, all while not in possession of any piece of the Triforce. For that matter, it is still split into its 3 pieces and nestled safely within the Silent Realm. In this installment, it is merely the mark of the hero, a symbol of his worthiness to use the Triforce. This is a great time to address a point Masked Nintendo Bandit brought up in his video. He claims that the Triforce has never before been seen to reside within one person while existing in its complete form. He explains that even Ganon from A Link to the Past did not contain the whole Triforce within himself, but instead kept it locked away in a chamber behind his boss room. This, however, is where Masked Nintendo Bandit and I disagree, as Skyward Sword Link is arguably an example of this exact occurrence. After collecting the last piece of the Triforce from within the Silent Realm, this Link is teleported out of Skykeep to the top of the goddess statue, where the 3 pieces of the Triforce appear from within Link's chest, assemble before him, and allow him to make his wish. Whether they were physically residing within him, or were coming out of the mysterious void that the rest of his items appear from, that is up to interpretation. but there is a potential that Link did have the whole Triforce within him for at least a few moments. In that same vein, the Triforce has never had any restrictions placed upon it as to who can touch it, what they can wish for, or how old they have to be to do so. So in theory, it is possible that Zelda could have had the entire Triforce within her, but not without meeting a few conditions. She would need to be just as balanced as Link in Skyward Sword in order to hold the Triforce. But now the question is, was she? The last and final piece of evidence comes from Breath of the Wild's Princess Zelda herself. Prior to the events of Breath of the Wild, Zelda is sad, shy, submissive, resentful, fearful, hopeless, and extremely insecure. She is proven to be out of balance. This Zelda is different from any other, as she wasn't even wise enough to see that without love and without self-confidence, she would never awaken the stealing powers of the goddess. She did, however, diligently train in the sacred springs, all 3 of them. She showed a strength of power and determination. In the final moments as Link took his last stand, Zelda had an epiphany. She loved Link. And as she was able to feel this love, she realized that this was the key to her sealing powers. Seeing this, her sealing powers awakened. But why is this important? Well, whilst Zelda was out of balance, there is no way that she could possess the complete power of the Triforce within her. The Triforce would have found her lacking and split into 3 pieces. If she did somehow manage to possess the Triforce the whole time, she could have made a wish with it at any point. The lore of the Triforce clearly states that if one touches the relic with a wish in their heart, their wish will come true. If I am wrong in this theory, and she is balanced, and she did possess the Triforce, then she could have used the Triforce's might at any time, even accidentally if she but had a wish in her heart. Perhaps a dead mother would come back to life to give her life guidance and counsel. Perhaps her sealing powers would have awakened ages ago. There are several desires that the young princess would have had that were a wish in her heart, and her wish would be granted. Additionally, in the final cutscene of the game after Ganon has been sealed, Zelda herself admits, "I can no longer hear the voice inside the sword. I suppose it would make sense if my power had dwindled over the past 100 years. I'm surprised to admit it, but I can accept that." Zelda affirms that the power used to seal the calamity was her own as it dwindled over the years. The power of the Triforce is constant, it is all-powerful, and it does not dwindle. Zelda does not possess the Triforce in Breath of the Wild. So if the Triforce doesn't dwell within the princess, why then did the mark of the Triforce appear upon the back of her hand? Perhaps it's because she was the only princess to date seen to have prayed, trained, and essentially bathed in all 3 sacred springs. Recalling that Zelda from Skyward Sword only visited 2, the Skyview Spring and the Earth Spring, springs representing the heavens and the earth, springs that awoke her memories as the divine goddess in her mortal body. Breath of the Wild Zelda, however, visited 3 springs nearly identical to the aforementioned 2, yet slightly off. Springs representing power, wisdom, and courage. Whether they are the same or different, it doesn't really matter. The fact is, the Breath of the Wild Zelda visited 1 more additional spring, and as such, purified her body, mind, and spirit beyond what we have seen any previous incarnation do. Similarly to how Link did with the fires in the Skyward Sword. As such, the manifestation of her power appears in perfect balance, the symbol for which is the Triforce. Based on the evidence outlined and the analysis thereof, I believe that Zelda does not possess the Triforce in Breath of the Wild. But at the end of all this, one question still remains. If Zelda doesn't have the Triforce, then where is it? Find out in the 2nd episode to this 3-part series on the Triforce in The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I'm Hyrule Monkey. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you all the next time I decide to monkey around in Hyrule.